Last week I rewatched Die Hard with a Vengeance, which is the third Die Hard movie. And I first watched it maybe 5 years ago. And one thing I remember about when I first watched it is I was starving the entire movie. There was snacks just 10 feet away in the kitchen, but I could not bring myself to pause the movie and go get a snack. I was like, I have to see what happens next. And I just loved it that much and I was glued to it. Then I rewatched it a couple months later with some other friends and I loved it even more. And they're like, that's such a good action movie. I'm like, yeah, it is such a good action movie. So rewatching it now, it just further intensified my love for it. I think Die Hard 3 is just one of my favorite action movies of all time. And I have this thought that I'm like, when I rewatched it, I was like, maybe I like this more than the first even. But I hadn't seen the first in a decade. So last night I rewatched the first to get a gauge on that. And it's also a phenomenal action movie and they both do things so well. Just great tactile action that you could really feel, because like a modern action movie to me fails because it's so digital. Like the CGI, it just takes me out of it. And a great example is John Wick 4. John Wick 4, like firstly, the exposition scenes in John Wick 4 will keep me from ever rewatching it. It's like 3 hours. And like an hour and a half or 2 hours of that is just dudes sitting around going, "You really want to do this, John? Aren't you done with revenge?" And like they're just spouting cliches about revenge and when does this end, and it's just not interesting. And I think the best action movies have you glued to your seat through the exposition scenes too. Like Jackie Chan classic action movies, the exposition scenes are so funny and so energetic. And then Die Hard, they're so cool. Like Bruce Willis has such a blasé attitude, but you know, the people feel real and grounded. Like the dynamic between him and his wife and the schmuck coworker, and you know, there's so much realness to it. And then like the cops interactions and stuff, it feels very real and not stylized. And sometimes that style works, but for John Wick 4 it just felt dreary for dreary's sake. It didn't feel self-aware. It wasn't like so dark that it was funny. It was just like towing the line but not ever crossing it. And then the action comes, and the action's great. There's some really great action in John Wick 4, just crazy choreography. But even then, like the Arc de Triomphe scene, which is arguably one of the best scenes, if not the best action scene in the movie, just feels so digital. All the cars in the background, I'm like, there's so much CGI and digital retouching and robotic camera movements here that it loses a tactility and realness that therefore makes the stakes feel less real. Because something like in Die Hard 3, there's a scene where they just crash through Central Park and drive down the entire park. And that feels so much more real and intense than anything in John Wick. And it's just them driving through a park and have people are diving out of the way. And that's because it's all captured in camera. And you know, I'm not a CGI practical effects like guy who's going to be like practical effects for life. I think CGI is a creative tool like anything, and it's been used to great effect many times over and over. But nonetheless, you do watch one of these old action movies and you realize what that does for the movie when it is in camera. Because, you know, Die Hard 3 came in the 90s, so there's a number of visual effects shots. But even then, they're far and few between, and most everything is clearly in camera. And just this timeless quality to it, just such good effects and stunts. And you know, like the train crash scene, you got to see the movie just for this train crash scene alone. It's one of the most intense set pieces I've seen in like a Hollywood action movie. But anyways, both movies are so good, Die Hard and Die Hard 3. I haven't seen Die Hard 2 in a long time. It's not directed by John McTiernan, who directed Die Hard 1 and 3. And I think maybe that will be felt if I go see the second, because 3 feels like a director who wanted to come back to his franchise and do it bigger and better and crazier, and do that he did. And I think that's the stark contrast between Die Hard 1 and 3. Die Hard 1 is very, you know, like tight. It's this story in a building, one building, and how much can you do in that building? They do a lot, but you feel them like working within those limitations. Whereas Die Hard 3 expands that scope to the entirety of New York City, and therefore everything is so much bigger in scale, and the stakes are bigger, and this and that. So, but nonetheless, I think both do the same things really well structure-wise. Because I think what we run into in a lot of movies here, like John Wick, I'll keep using as an example, and people will be upset because people love John Wick. But John Wick 4, like, a lot of the stakes of each action scene is just, I gotta defeat the baddies to get to the next level. You know, it feels video gamey. It's like, this number of baddies is being thrown at me, and therefore when they're all dead, I can progress. And it's like fun to watch. It's fun to watch a guy take a bunch of dudes out. But it's just so much more satisfying, like in Die Hard 1, to watch like a guy go up against one guy, and the odds are not at all in his favor, and he has to figure it out. You know, he's barefoot. He doesn't have a weapon. He has 2 bullets. You know, you're always on the edge of your seat, and the stakes are so clearly addressed. And this is true for Die Hard 3. Every scene, not only is there an overarching story stake that is like running throughout everything, but each scene establishes and delivers upon its stakes so satisfyingly. Like in Die Hard 3, they have this Simon Says game where a terrorist on the phone is saying, do this or this will happen. And time again, they do fail. And, you know, you're used to the heroes just like succeeding and the story going on, but they have to fail in a creative way in order to like save people's lives, or in order to still make it to the next checkpoint or whatever they're getting to. And that's so satisfying to watch, like that train scene where they both split up and try to get there separately, and Bruce Willis is trying to get the bomb off the train. It's just so intense, in the cross-cutting. And there's like the Captain America Winter Soldier elevator scene clearly pulled a lot from the Die Hard 3 elevator scene in the bank. It's such a, you know, Die Hard 3 does so much of this grand scale really well, but even that, this tight elevator scene is just so good. And yeah, and I don't know which is better. I think Die Hard 3 I have grown more endeared to because I've seen it more, and I've seen it more recently. But Die Hard 1, I see why people hold it as the best, because it is this tight thing. But for me, I think where Die Hard 1 is less entertaining is 2 things. I think Bruce Willis being alone the whole movie is awesome, because he's like a lone wolf taking these guys out. But in Die Hard 3, you got Sam Jackson also at the top of his game. Feels like another movie star just doing his thing the best he's ever done it. And them just playing off of each other the whole movie makes the movie like 10 times more entertaining, because they have such a funny dynamic, and they bounce off each other so well. And it never feels corny. It's like an action movie, but the people feel real. The reactions feel real. They're playing it as throw humans in these ridiculous situations. How would they react? And every now and then, Bruce Willis still says his "yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker." But yeah, like, other than that, it feels very much like real people, which I appreciate as well. But I guess Bruce Willis kind of does have that dynamic with the cop in the first movie who's on the radio. But even then, I think that's where the first one struggles for me. I think all the stuff with the cops and the radio, it leads to some interesting plotting, like how it weaves together and how the terrorists find out about stuff. But it's, to me, I think I read Roger Ebert's review, and maybe that's clouding my judgment, but he really hated the police deputy. In Die Hard 1, there's this hard-ass police deputy who's just like making all the wrong decisions, and it's fun to see a character that's making the police department look really stupid and floundering. But he makes so many bad decisions, and he's so one-note doing so, that it kind of just becomes like, okay, this movie's pretty grounded and everything's working like a well-oiled machine, and then there's just this guy who's just throwing rocks at the well-oiled machine. And I don't know. It's something I'd have to really get a final opinion on if I rewatch it more. But And then the endings of both movies kind of dropped the ball a bit for me. I think the ending of 3, I won't go into specifics, I guess, but the ending of 3 just kind of rushes to a conclusion, and it almost would have been more satisfying to see the bad guy win, or at least win in some capacity. And the ending of Die Hard 1, I think when the guy comes back with the gun and then the cop shoots him, it feels a bit tacked on. It feels a bit like, okay, we get it. He's used his gun again, but I don't really feel anything about that. You know, I feel more just confused. I'm like, how is that guy still alive? And why do they keep his gun with him? You know, why does he still have his big AUG gun, even though he was like carried out as a corpse? It's so very confusing. But anyways, I think that tactility is really what I wanted to touch upon in this video. Because watching old action movies and everything's captured in camera, it just feels so much more real, and back then they played the characters much more real, and you compare it, it seems cheap to compare it to like a Marvel movie, but Marvel seems almost more concerned with like the characters being characters, which makes sense. They're superheroes, they're bigger than life, but like I'd like to see scenes where like the action is challenging the superheroes and putting them in a position where a normal person would actually have to think, because more times than that, not in Marvel movies, the Avengers, the whatever, they don't have to think their way through a situation. It's just like, now's the action and we just use our superpowers to kick ass, you know? And it's so satisfying to watch Bruce Willis think his way through each situation, you know? And so satisfying to see him get beaten time and time again. He's bloody, his feet are just scraped the hell up by glass, and he still has to push through to save the day. And Die Hard 3, it's the same. They're just exhausted. They're being run around on this wild goose chase and beaten the hell out of, and time again outsmarted, and yet they still come out on top. And that's so satisfying to see. And I feel like action movies nowadays don't let their characters get beaten as much, and they don't let us feel that as much. They want them to keep feeling like heroes till the end, you know. And it's fun to let people be flawed. It's more fun and engrossing to see somebody who's flawed be flawed and to make mistakes. And yeah, I really enjoyed rewatching Die Hard. As always, rambled in every which direction, but I strongly recommend Die Hard 3. I think it's better than the first. I think it's just a little more fun, and you know, it's a little more exciting. Non-stop throughout with the Sam Jackson and Bruce Willis dynamic, but I adore it, and I hope you enjoy it too. And thanks for watching. I love movies, and I hope you have a nice day. Bye bye.